Hello everyone, welcome to the weekly recap. We have a lot of game news. Hey,
yeah,
that's cool. So we've got some game news on games coming out, other miscellaneous. We also have Sony reorganization, and we have G4G Live coming up.
Yeah, so we had our first live show about a week and a half ago or so. Our next one's coming up this Wednesday at 7 Eastern and 6 Central.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's going to be another great show. We got an amazing turnout to the first one. Tons of interaction in the chat. I was having a tough time keeping up with how fast it was going.
Yeah.
Which is funny for having just that be our first show.
Yeah.
We didn't
definitely.
expect that type of turnout. So thank you to everybody that did that. Hopefully you guys will come back for the second one, and hopefully people will share it. That way we can get even more people in there. We love hearing what you guys have to say, especially in the live chat, definitely.
Adding to the live chat, that was the most awesome live chat I think I've ever seen or been a part of. And it's really hard with there only being a few of us for us to keep up with the chat.
Yes.
But I was doing everything I could to keep up with the chat because it was awesome. So hopefully we get another really good chat turnout. Join us, get in the chat. We love to hear what you think. We're trying to integrate things from chat into the show.
Oh,
so
yes,
we may
absolutely.
shout your stuff out. So
yeah, if you have something that's been stewing for a while and you've been really wanting to hear, because that happens where
seriously.
like certain people they'll hear certain stories that aren't that big, and sometimes it is a big story that just gets ignored for whatever reason. If you have stuff like that you've been thinking about, definitely spring it on us. We'd love that type of randomness in the show. For
absolutely,
sure.
Definitely. Yeah. So we got release dates for 2 big games, one exclusive on each platform. So Detroit and State of Decay.
Yes, yeah.
So here's something interesting about Detroit. I love Detroit. I think I've been pretty open about being really excited about Detroit. And every trailer they've shown us, every gameplay thing that they've added in over the last 6 months or whatever has looked incredible. But there have been a lot of people that have wanted Detroit to fail.
I've been seeing a lot of that, mostly I think on Twitter. And they're not all the same groups of people, I've noticed. There's actually like more than one camp that for whatever reason they're out for this game to fail.
Which is so weird.
Lots of people were saying it's going to be canceled. There are people just making predictions saying, I predict it's going to be canceled, hoping that it would, because that's a weird thing to throw out there.
Yeah, definitely.
People did the same thing about Crackdown. That's received a lot of hate. I would say this is Sony's Crackdown in a way.
It is.
And then you had other people that just don't like the developer. They have a problem with the actual guy that runs the studio. And there's a lot of rumors and a lot of things that people have been trying to spread about that. I haven't seen anything 100% substantiated. I haven't seen anything that can be absolute proof of any of that stuff. And you and I have made statements in the comment section before. We don't go off of any of that stuff. If anything is rumor like that, and you're saying that so-and-so is bad and we shouldn't interact with them, we don't pay attention to that stuff unless it's absolute proof and they've done something against us. These people have not done anything against us. This is a developer. This is Europe. This is, I believe it's France.
Yeah.
They have a different way of dealing with things.
Do.
They're not as sensitive as we are here in America. We're something we're going to talk about a little later.
Yeah, definitely.
They're not as crazy when it comes to some of these things that happen where, they get all up in arms over things to them that aren't that big of a deal. They might be a big deal to us because we're like 5 years in the future by comparison to where certain other areas of the planet are right now.
Yeah.
Same thing goes for Japan. Like they don't get up in arms about a lot of the stuff that we do. So.
Yeah, and that's a conversation we've had, and I'm sure we'll go back to is the different cultures that are involved in the development of some of these games react differently to some of this stuff. So I thought it was interesting, and you're right. There's multiple camps that were against Detroit for one reason or another.
Out to get this game, out to get this developer.
Yeah.
Yes.
And one of the things I saw a lot of was kind of ironic. A lot of people were talking about it being like a walking simulator, or it's going to be boring. And a lot of those people are the same people that love the Telltale games, Horizon Zero Dawn, Hellblade, things that if you put them together and you assemble them would be similar to Detroit, except Detroit's got some really unique mechanics that I haven't seen anywhere. Yeah. So that's really interesting. But I am glad it's coming. And I can't wait to get in there.
Not only that, I'd add one more group of people to what you're referencing here. You're speaking broadly about those games.
Yeah.
But specifically, I've seen people that have said they want more single-player, story-driven, narrative-driven games bashing this game. And it's weird. Like, that's all this is. That's pretty much what Detroit is.
This is the perfect single-player, immersive kind of game.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I hope that it gets really well received when it comes out.
Yeah.
That's what I hope for. Also interesting is we recently got news that Dayz Gone is delayed.
Yes, yeah.
And there's some interesting things about that because it seemed like, from some accounts, I guess, that it was fairly ready to go.
I've heard from a couple people that have apparently either seen it or played it or both behind closed doors that it's actually very polished. It actually looks a lot more further along than some other games that are coming out this year. So it is interesting that it got delayed. That could go back to some of the things you and I were talking about.
Yeah, so that was the question I was going to pose to you is, do you think this has to do with the thing you've been predicting, which I'll reiterate shortly, is that Sony has a lot of games lined up, ready to go, but they're not giving them release dates because they're not ultra happy with their game sales, to where they're trying to get a more accurate way of landing their dates, so that they don't have as much.
So that they're not competing with any big releases by any of the other competing platforms. I think that we're seeing proof of that. I've never seen this before, where you have God of War was announced. What is it? 3 months prior to the launch was the date. That's insane.
That was very short.
That's not the way the game companies used to do business.
No.
They used to announce a launch period. So they'd say coming winter 2017 or whatever, or they say coming spring or coming fall, and then they slowly started getting away from that window, and they started just putting years up there. They're like, okay, 2017, 2018, 2019, whatever. And now they're getting as vague as they can possibly be so that they can do this very thing. That's shocking to see only a 3-month leeway period for people to rack up pre-orders. Pre-orders, maybe they're not as important as they used to be because of digital. That could be a situation. But, I mean, they really used to be a good indicator for knowing how many shipments of the copies of the games that the developers and publishers needed to send out to the stores. They would come up with this. It was like basically almost an algorithm type of thing that some of the companies would use. They had programs and stuff where they say, well, we have this many pre-orders, so we'll ship this many copies. And then certain retailers got way more than others, and some retailers got almost exactly what they pre-ordered. It was really interesting to see some of this data that I saw in the past. So this is weird. That's a weird thing to do. I kind of feel like that's not the best thing for a strong launch. We'll find out. By time God of War is here, there will be nearly 80 million PS4s. So if it sticks with the highest attach rates from first-party exclusives for Sony, it'll be somewhere around a 10% attach rate. So hopefully it does that. I'm hoping it does 4 or 5 million right out of the gate. So you can, when you hit that 5 million mark right out of the gate, we've seen it a lot with games like
that's the mark.
Monster Hunter and a few others. The Witcher shipped at 6 million across 3 platforms. When you see that, it makes other people get interested and they run out and buy it as well. So that's kind of what the industry needs. Especially at the console side, if you're a console person and that's what you're looking for, you definitely want those games
to have those launch
succeed.
Numbers.
So again,
very important.
Detroit getting a 4 or 5 month leeway on their pre-order, same thing. We'll see how that ends up working out. Yeah.
And all I can think is maybe the pre-orders aren't as big of a thing, but from what you just said, you would think that the pre-order idea and having enough notice with the pre-order would be imperative to the profit of the game.
Definitely,
of making sure you're not shipping way too many, or that you're shipping the right ones to the right places to help with the profit issue, which is part of the issue of needing to sell X amount of the game. But if your profit margins are terrible, then you'd need to sell even more of the game, and pre-orders might be something that would do that. So it's an interesting strategy.
Every developer is basically looking for the Grand Theft Auto or the Call of Duty effect, where they're shipping. They ship a box of 50 games to one retailer, maybe 100 games to one retailer. They sell all 100 just in time for the next shipment to get there of another 50 games or whatever. And they just want that happening year round because that's the way to maximize the way the profit margins work. So you're right about that. So we'll see how that works out.
Well, and it's been interesting, your prediction of what Sony's doing has had a lot of things that have landed in favor of your prediction, that they're trying to be really careful about maybe landing too close to a game similar. So I think one of the things they're worried about with Dayz Gone would be State of Decay. Launching against State of Decay. That could be. But at the same time, they have data that says, these casuals, the same data Microsoft has in coming out with the Games Pass, casuals are buying 1 or 2 games a year. So Detroit and God of War.
That's your 2 games right there.
Are your 2 games this year. So maybe it's also related to not wanting to compete with Nintendo for sure, not wanting to compete with Microsoft, but not wanting to cannibalize themselves. Because we have this data that says people don't buy that many games.
Yeah, you don't want to compete with your competitors, but you also don't want to compete with yourself. Yeah. Releasing 4 big games in the same year when your data says that that's not what people are doing. Yeah.
So another interesting thing on that side is we found out, I guess we only got one confirmed, but big kind of PlayStation exclusives coming to Xbox. Crash Bandicoot is the one that was confirmed. And I've heard Hellblade rumored. We don't really go off of rumors, but I've heard.
Yeah, I've still not seen anything substantiated. No proof of that, so don't know yet.
So my interesting question, just related to us having the one that's confirmed, is we've talked about Microsoft having a different definition of exclusivity lately. Is Sony following suit with that, or is Sony ahead of that game? Are they thinking the same thing? Are they thinking that exclusivity is becoming yesterday and looking at a new philosophy?
I don't think they're fully there yet. I think that's one of those things when we talk about like 3 to 5 years off. I've said that before on Weekly Recap last year. Those probably really are 3 to 5 years off. And it just takes a while for every company to catch up to what Microsoft has been doing in the game space. But there are tons of examples. You can go on and on about all the examples of companies copying what Microsoft has done.
Very true.
They still are leading the way in innovation when it comes to setting the rules. Sometimes they're a little too early with that stuff and they get a lot of backlash for it, but they still end up setting the new paradigm for whatever it is that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And I definitely think that Sony is eventually going to follow suit with that. You've heard about PS Now. I'm not sure if you just said it. Eventually being on PC, and eventually they're going to weed out some of the other games from some of the older systems, and so that's going to make room for PlayStation 4 games, so on and so forth. Eventually, they'd like to. I think Sony's actually said this. I want to say I saw this in an interview. They'd like a future generation of the PlayStation platform to be something that you are streaming essentially via the cloud or via servers. So I do think that they're moving in that direction with their platform.
I definitely think so. Yeah. I think Cadera was the first really big step in moving in that direction.
Makes sense. Way cheaper to do that than losing $19 billion on 2 different generations of consoles.
Absolutely, definitely. State of Decay, we also got a release date for. And I'm really excited about State of Decay. So basically, Undead Labs put out a big article this week saying, here's all the info you've been looking for. They're really excited about the game. Personally, I'm really excited about the game. Detroit and State of Decay are coming out in a similar time frame, and I'm going to be running back and forth between the two of them because they're both going to be really awesome.
That's going to be tough. We're going to have multiple TVs set up.
Yep. That's exactly what's going to have to happen. I'm going to have to learn to do one controller in each hand.
Yeah.
And play the less skill-driven game with my left hand because I think that would be a disaster. But what's interesting is I've heard a ridiculous amount of hate over State of Decay.
Yeah.
And we don't even know anything about it yet.
Well, we've got that little bit of the content drop. What I think is funny about that, I'm not going to say too much about that because we're saving a lot of that for the live.
Yeah, there will be a bigger conversation about this.
But what I think is funny is that they did show a trailer and they did show the same animations from the same types of characters that were in the first game. To me, it just looked slightly cleaner, slightly nicer looking. Yeah. And we've heard, because there's been information, the map is going to be essentially 3 times the size of the other map, or 3 individual maps. And you're going to have 4-player co-op. That's all the first game needed, was more of that.
Definitely.
If you can say it needed anything, I liked what it was. So I'm very happy with what I've seen before. I don't understand the hysteria over that.
Well, and it's funny because, again, we'll go into it more in the live show, but we've heard just some crazy things like, well, is it AA or AAA? Because if it's not AAA, then it's going to be crap. I've literally heard similar comments to that. Or, people talking about it being too similar to the old game, but a lot of those people loved the old game other than it was kind of missing that co-op element to it. So it's been really interesting to see with how little information we have, how much people are have been digging for something in State of Decay. It feels like Crackdown again.
Yeah.
Is what it feels like. So
that's true.
Hopefully when it does come out, it's well received because I think they've put together exactly what they needed for their sequel. In my opinion, I think they have.
Yeah, all these companies are coming out with great games this year. I don't know how you can be upset or say there's no games.
I don't either.
It's just a weird argument to see.
Hopefully, when it comes out, it'll speak for itself and we see that die down. But it has been a kind of a weird thing to see. So we have one more big topic, and shout out to Stuart Joglemon's on Twitter.
Yeah, Jaglemon's
right?
on, I think he's on both Twitter and YouTube under that name as well. Yeah, he sends us a lot of good stuff, a lot of good information. Definitely. I like what he sends us, but it's funny because it's like you click on it and you look at it and it's a screenshot of something and it's like a website you've never seen,
right?
And it doesn't have any like real like there's no logos or anything. So you're like, did somebody make this on their computer?
Right.
He sends those types of things a lot, but I still like seeing that information.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely, he's always looking for the inside tip on what's going on with Sony.
Yeah.
He's a big Sony fan.
Big Sony. Mm-hmm. And that's the interesting thing is he seems to hunt down things that we don't
that you don't see anywhere.
That are interesting conversations, like in this case. So the thing that he sent us was about the structural changes coming at Sony.
Yeah.
So basically effective April 1st, which I'm guessing that's the end of their quarter.
That is. Remember that was when Harai was supposed to...
That's right.
Yeah. Step down.
So beginning of next quarter, effective beginning of next quarter, Sony Interactive Entertainment, who's over PlayStation, is reshifting some people around. And I cracked up when I saw this article because it was the classic thing that we've complimented Sony on is their PR is incredible. Yeah. They can put out the most informational, vague article that you could ever find. And so you read their article and you're like, okay,
yeah. It sounds good, okay. I think.
What does it mean?
Did they say anything?
Did they actually tell us anything? And so I found this interesting. I found a couple of interesting things in it, and I found a lot of question marks in it where I was like, what is going on? Yeah. They're moving all kinds of people around. They're, putting different people under different bosses and so on. Yeah. And all of that, we would have to have a comparison of exactly who was under who before for it to really be much, and that's where they're really good at releasing something like that. They make it sound like it's great because how are you going to figure out if it's good or bad?
It's like we've seen it before and we've referenced this having worked for certain companies. And I've worked for companies that were very transparent and they told their employees, like, it's not good. Things are bad. And then I've worked for companies that were like, nope, it's good. Wait till you see the quarterly release that we're going to put out there. And you read the transcript or you listen in and you're like, how do they, like they're taking stuff from like a year ago and they're comparing to things that are happening right now, and they're trying to balance.
It sound really great.
Yeah,
what they're doing. Yeah,
Sony does do. I hate to say it. Sony does do that occasionally on some of their.
They do
on some of their conference calls. They have.
One of the greater skills of business is being able to present your best and your worst year as though it's always your best year. Sony is fabulous at that. And I've seen some companies that are really good at that. Yeah. Just the way they use their language, just like this article, you're like, wow, impressive. I think. Is it impressive?
Sounds great. Let me buy some stock.
Okay. Here's what stood out to me. So they said that meeting the needs of the globally connected PS4 community while also responding to specific requirements in each regional market is an increasingly important priority. That was what stuck out to me. And I'll tell you what two things I thought of.
Yeah.
So, and they're totally different. One of them is the regional market thing. So what does that mean? And again, what does that mean? Does that mean you're struggling with regional market issues, or does that mean that you're trying to adapt ahead of time because the regional markets are changing? Well, we've seen a culture shift happening here. We've talked about it with Microsoft, with sort of the sensitivity increasing and, more of a cracking down on that type of thing. It made me think of the fact they just pulled down that game.
Yeah, they took down that game.
I forget what it's called.
I don't know. It's something with dating or something like that. And I get why they would take that down, but that basically is now, it sets a precedent, essentially. You're going to see more of that in the future.
Well, and what's funny is when we talked about Microsoft doing that and Microsoft moving in that direction, a lot of people thought that Sony wouldn't do that. A lot of people were like, Sony's not going to follow suit. They don't work that way. You look at their regions, the regional markets, and you see that in this region, they're doing that same thing. They're increasing sensitivity.
It's happened before. Tecmo Koei, I believe, released a statement saying that they would not release Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball 3 here in the States because, and I'm not gonna say what they said.
Yeah.
But they referenced the type of people that are here in the States right now, and they said it just wouldn't fly. There's just no way they could get away with it.
It would be a risk to them.
And when I first saw that, this was a few years ago actually, so they were seeing what was going on even back then, just like South Park has been making fun of it for years.
Yeah.
And when I first saw it, I was like, that's terrible. That's terrible that we're getting cut out for games now. We're losing out on games because of certain political movements and things that are happening. But it is the way of the world now. It's just the way things are. There's nothing you can do about it. You got to watch what you say. You might get blocked. You gotta watch everything you do.
Everything you do, the style of your typing, the way you say things, the things you say when you're in a party.
Be careful with those caps.
Caps is a good example.
Yeah.
Don't use caps. So it's interesting. I mean, you were right. You called it. You said Sony will follow suit. This will happen, at least in our region.
Yeah.
And here we are. The other thing I tied it to is totally different. Recently, Steam got into a lot of trouble in Australia for violating their consumer protection laws. So that could be part of it too. Sony operates in a lot of regions. All the regions have all these different requirements, which is specifically referenced in that quote. Are they trying to deal with an increase in that type of thing, an increase in regional laws and regulations and stuff like that? But we have no idea.
But it's also vague. You don't know what it means.
It's all really vague, so we have no idea. We'll keep looking into this, and we'll keep looking for more on this and see if ever we can tie it down to anything. But worth a mention. Thought it was kind of interesting.
No. Hopefully we can elaborate on that as more information comes out.
And a lot of these topics we have a lot more to say on, and there's a lot more that happened in the last couple weeks than what we have here.
We'll try to get that into the live show.
We'll try to get into the live show.
Certain things work better when you're going back and forth with 3 or 4 people, and certain things work better just to talk about them like they're news, kind of what we did with Detroit, Dayz Gone, and all the other stuff going on right now, State of Decay.
So we'll get as much of that in as we can wherever we've got some good conversation. If you have things that you've seen or heard or that you haven't heard us mention, drop them in chat or drop them in the comments for this video a couple days ahead of the live show. And shout out to not only those who came to our live show, which again, we really appreciate how much of a turnout we had and how awesome the chat was for the live show. But we've also been streaming Sea of Thieves.
Oh, yes, yeah.
With a good many people, and I'll shout out the ones that, off the top of my head, if we forget you, shout out to you as well. Easy E, Deathmobile, Knuckles, Operation, Watchbot, and Azrael.
Yes, and there have been a couple others, so if we forgot, it's not intentional. We did a tweet about that. I did a joke about that in the last few days. So it's, everybody's welcome to join us. It doesn't matter if we tag you or not. Just let us know if you want to jump in, and we'll definitely make room for everybody we've talked to and interacted with online.
Absolutely.
And everybody we've podcasted with as well. So
that's why we do the tweet, especially if we're streaming, but we also do it sometimes when we're just playing to let everybody know that we're going to be on there. We usually have an open party where anybody can drop in, even if they're not playing the game, or come in and play. We would love to see you out there, especially Sea of Thieves, because my goodness, the dynamic in that game is completely different every time you play.
It is.
Like, to name a couple of examples that happened to us over the course of 48 hours. We went in there and we ran into another pirate clan and befriended them and just created a fleet and started sailing around together. And then the very next time we logged in, and there were people like at the spawn just repeatedly killing the characters again and again and again, just I guess for the fun of it. And we've seen a lot in between those two. So what's really cool about that game is it's always different, because it depends who you encounter, how you encounter them, who you have with you. And it's just been a blast. And we have the videos are up on my Mixer, which is mixer.com/MoxxieBot, for the Sea of Thieves streams that we've done. So if you didn't catch it, you can catch it on my Mixer channel. Had a lot of fun. They're super long streams because we all get into that game and we cannot get back out. Period. So check it out.
It's hard to turn it off, but we were up till 5 a.m. playing that.
It's crazy.
It's too much fun.
So we stayed up till 5 a.m. streaming and playing that, and then we saw tweets of at least 5 other people that said exactly the same thing that were not in our clan. So that was pretty hilarious. So shout out to those that have been playing with us. Anybody is always welcome. We love to have you guys join us. That's it, right? Yeah,
that's pretty much it. Well, just one other shout out to Face. It's Face23 BKNY, I believe. He's been watching our stuff for a long time and gave us a nice compliment in the live chat. So hopefully we'll see you in the live chat again.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So G4G Live is at 7 Eastern, 6 Central on Wednesday. Come jump in chat. Come check it out. We appreciate your support. And we'll see you there. Is that it?
That's it, yeah.
All right. Thanks for watching.